That's what I want to see. China matters, but that matters too.
Yeah.
China's not the only one screwing us.
And on that very classy note, Chris Cuomo, take it away.
Have a good weekend, my friend. Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation, where right and left come to be reasonable. Now, tonight, I want to leapfrog ahead of where we are. Okay, and I'll tell you why. I want to get ahead to the next wave of economic activity. Is it going to be chaos or is it going to be a gift? Today, China said their door is open to trade talks with the United States. That's what some report. Others are saying that China said they are open to looking at what negotiations would be about, and then they'll let you know if they want to do it or not. You see what I'm saying? But either way, that is being used as a catalyst to push the cycle, okay? The news caused a bounce back in the stock market, okay, but it's going to go up and down for a while because of this uncertainty. And yes, it has now recovered all the losses since Liberation Day when the tariffs started, but does that mean no damage was done? Trump and co say, yeah, that's what it means. Most in the markets say no, and I'll explain why tonight. Also, tonight, the tariffs just got tougher here at home. A loophole which let us buy cheap goods from China with no tariff expires tonight. Analysts are saying you're going to see near-term price increases 2-3x. Others are saying don't worry about price increases because the shelves are going to be empty. Now, the president has had it with criticism that he has tanked the markets and that he may become the first president to create a recession, which is 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth by their own hand, by his own hand. So earlier this evening, he started giving us what his new explanation is going to be when asked about the economy and the troubles.
Some people on Wall Street have expressed concerns that the possibility of a recession is increasing. And I want to know what you think about that. Are you comfortable with the country potentially dipping into a recession for a period of time if you are able to achieve your long-term goals?
Well, you say some people on Wall Street say, well, I can tell you something else. Some people on Wall Street say that we're going to have the greatest economy in history. Why don't you talk about them? Because some people on Wall Street say this is the greatest.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at, though. It's the same question.
Yeah, there are many people on Wall Street say this is going to be the greatest windfall ever happened.
Now, there's so much there that's frustrating, right? First of all, I thought anonymous sources were no good. I thought they were always fake news. Some say on Wall Street that this is going to be the greatest ever. You see what I'm saying? People do what works for them. And the president is excellent when it comes to finding the best version of events to suit his own agenda. So, but also the questioner, she's playing gotcha, right? With the some say salvo herself. So of course he was going to say the opposite. And her question was too long and too worried about being confrontational, so she gave him room to pick different outcomes, which is why he went with, here's the opposite version of your reality. The question is what he doesn't want to answer, which is the timing. How long until this tape turns around? How bad do you think it's going to get? For how long? He doesn't want to deal with any of that, okay? So now you have the state of play in politics being the left saying, see, we told you Trump would be a disaster. And Trump and co saying, see, the tariffs are working. China's coming. Any pain is temporary, but the trade deals are worth it. And I say, let's not add to the noise of the competing narratives, all right? Because which one of those you want to argue, what difference does it make? It won't move the needle. And let's agree that Trump may not have done things the right way here, but he did something in the name of helping the majority of workers in this family, or at least that's what he says it's about. And certainly that's what we need. Also, let's set aside whether any deals on the table or to come with China happen because of the tariffs or despite them. Okay? So let's just get to what really matters here. What happens next? Okay? To our economy and our price structure here at home, and then the U.S. kind of China/foreign trade deal piece, like, how it's all balanced out. I have a China expert and a trading expert to look at what those options are and what is going to influence what likely happens, okay? And Joining me now is the author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America, Gordo Chang, my man Gordon Chang, and my buddy of forever, John McNiff, the founder and chief investment officer of Modem Capital Management. It's good to see you, handsome. I had more that I wanted to say about you, Gordon, but I guess in the control room they got tired of hearing me, so they just raced the teleprompter to your name. So I took the hint. So Gordo, when you're looking at this situation, I've been watching your social media. China's done. This is Trump's world now. They're dumping American assets, but it doesn't matter. They're running out of options. They're looking to come to the table. What is your theory of what's going on? It seems like you're saying the tariffs worked and China's feeling too much pain, so they're coming to the table.
Well, we saw at the end of last week that China was not imposing any tariffs at all on about $45 billion of U.S. imports. These are products that China needed, and this was a major concession. What was important about this, Chris, was that Beijing did not announce what it was doing. And I think the reason is because Xi Jinping has been basing his legitimacy on saying, well, I've taken China to a new level. We no longer need the U.S. We've surpassed the U.S. So I don't think he can say that he's dependent on trade with the U.S. And he certainly can't say that he is buckling under to U.S. pressure. So right now you have a Chinese regime. The economy is in distress. It is contracting. We can see this from the first number that came out of April, which was the Purchasing Managers Index, which showed a contraction of factory activity, which was the one bright hope of the Chinese economy. We know from February and March that the country is in a deflationary spiral. This is a distressed situation for Xi Jinping. And the only way out of it is if he can get Trump to fold. And I'm not so sure that he can do that.
All right, Gordo, thank you for laying that out. I appreciate it. That is the positive theory of the case. And John, you're looking at the markets all the time and you're meeting with people about this and you're trying to get a figure on it. That is not the only way to see it, the way Gordon's putting it out there. What are the other market factors that may affect investors and consumers no matter what happens politically? And then how do you see the balance of who's getting hurt more and what that means going forward?
So I think Gordon makes some great points. The pushback to take the other side of that would be that we're also experiencing pressure here in the U.S. Like if you look in Michigan and car plants and Stellantis closed down. You have issues with the Jeep Wagoneer plants in Michigan and more in Michigan as well, where they can't get enough engines, so they've shut down there as well. So pain is being felt on both sides. And I think what's going on from my standpoint is that we are at a position with China. And if you kind of think of it as a game theory standpoint, which I believe a lot of the people involved in negotiations with tariffs do, use this type of model. We're like in the bottom right quarter where both of us are losing right now. Everyone is at their ultimate stage of tariffs, right? Where we are, and China has matched us. So when you sit there, the only really room to get positive movement is lower and moving away from that kind of lose-lose situation where we are now. China did not cave when we came out with the tariffs. They matched us. If had they caved and conceded to us or made concessions, then that would have been a very big positive to us in the U.S. That did not happen. So I think what we're seeing is, there's issues in China. I will push back. Their stock market ETF is up over 15% this year. FXI, S&P. Yes, we're back from our lows, but we're still down 3.5%. So China's economy, albeit I agree, is slowing and has issues, particularly on the real estate side. But they're also doing stimulus, where our Fed is in a spot right now where they're in a very tough spot, whether they can lower rates or not. And today's data with unemployment really kind of took that potential for a May cut off the table, and they meet next week. So it'll be very interesting to see what they have to say with that.
So, Gordo, the idea is you're hyper optimistic that China's feeling the pain more than we are and that they would cave to the pain more than we will. The only thing I'll add to John for you to respond to is, politically, it's not even a close call, Gordo, because the president can say whatever he wants. He's got pressure from his own, he's got pressure from the other party, and he's got pressure of delivering for the American people. Xi Jinping doesn't deal with any of that.
Sure. But also Xi Jinping is facing a political crisis of his own. We can see that from his loss of support in the Communist Party senior ranks, especially in the military. So he's going to face the pressure as well. Especially because he's boxed himself in. He has now configured the Chinese political system so that only the most hostile answers are considered to be acceptable, which means there's a real possibility, Chris, that he could take China off the cliff by not negotiating with the U.S., by not doing what is economically rational. And that's a problem for him. So yes, of course, there's going to be pain in the U.S. But let's remember, we have had 3 decades of deeply injurious China policy and 3 decades of deeply injurious trade policy. So of course, there are going to be great costs getting out of this. But if we don't accept those costs, we are going to have an economy which is decimated by China's theft of U.S. intellectual property to the tune of about $500 billion a year. And we're going to have more factories leave the United States. That is just completely unacceptable. So we are going to have to go through some very difficult times if we're going to want to maintain the United States as we've had it, as seen it in the past.
Well, but you may have to go through pain of transition, John, but the question is, who's causing the pain and for how long you're going to have to endure it, right? And that's the question about whether this was the right way to do what Trump's trying to do.
So I think that's where the markets and my pushback would be. Like, I agree with like everything you're saying around kind of the issues related to trade with China and their what they do with intellectual property rights and things like that. However, it would be much easier for us to have a dialogue with them and and use tariffs if we didn't have a global tariff trade war going on at the same time. So now when you look at our economy and the strength that we have versus just focusing on China, now we have issues with Europe, we have issues with Japan, we have issues with Canada and Mexico. So we've really put ourselves, by coming forward with this stick across the entire globe, in a really, I think, a poor position from a negotiation standpoint. And the second little point I'll just make on that is if you kind of just go back to COVID, we lasted a month with shutdown in our economy, and President Xi really was over a year there. So I think the pain threshold here in the U.S. is definitely lower, and the markets kind of focus on that as well. And are looking, I think one of the reasons I think we've rallied back is because you had, us at this point of ultimatums, and now we've backed off from that, and the markets have really kind of come to the thought that there are going to be deals done. It is going to take time, and that is going to be the race here. Does this data get worse while these deals get made over time? And historically, they do take a long period of time to go. And do we slide into recession? Do we have this kind of economic pain prolonged?
What do you think of that, Gordon? I'll give you the last point on that in terms of, you heard how I led into this. Price increases. I've never heard of the American people saying, we're going to buckle down and we're going to take some pain and we're not going to buy the cheap stuff. We're going to only buy American and not buy it all because we're backing our president's plan. I haven't seen that kind of patriotism recently. How does that factor into your analysis of who gives first?
Well, there's a real chance that Trump decides to fold, but I don't think that he will. It would be nice to think that we could marshal all of our friends and trading partners in a grand coalition against China. But really, that's what the Biden administration, to its credit, tried to do and absolutely failed. So perhaps imposing tariffs on everyone and making everyone come to the U.S. Because remember, we have almost 40% of global consumer spending is in the United States. Everybody needs our markets. And yes, this is messy. Yes, this is choppy. Yes, it really looks ugly. But maybe this is the only way to do it. Only time will tell, as John points out. And as Americans, we hope that Trump succeeds. Maybe the tactics don't, but we got a lot riding on this because really there's no alternative if we want to remain a prosperous society.
All right, I'll give you the last word, Johnny. I see you giving me the stink eye right now because you had something you wanted to say. You thought it's only my show. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead. You make your last point.
I am like a reporter now. So I would just say, I would just prefer if we done, and if you look back in the first term where we had Trump's first term and how he handled tariffs with China and how well it was just markets responded to it. And actually the Biden administration kept them in place. That if we'd done a more targeted approach right here, pharmaceuticals are a huge issue, national defense, huge issue, things like that, and really focused on that with then the support of other allies that we could say, okay, we can create trade agreements around you versus this kind of all in across the board global trade war. Really, to me, is a huge mistake.
John McNiff, thank you very much. Gordon Chang, as always, let's keep the conversation going as we get more pieces of the puzzle put in place. Okay, fellas, have a good weekend, and thank you for being here on a Friday night. 4 minutes and 35 seconds coming up. The benefit to that is those were two advancements off where everybody right now is Trump screwed up and it's not going to happen, or, yeah, look, China's coming. That's where they are. You're now 2 steps ahead, okay? The president's new budget proposal for the upcoming year was released today. Trump plans to spend big on defense and slash programs he calls woke. What are the spending cuts? Did he keep his promise about the entitlements? And is Congress going to even come close to passing this? Lawmakers on each side make the case to you next. We see cuts in government spending of about $163 billion over a period of years. That's the lowest level in the modern era. That tells you two things. One, not many people cut spending, okay, because we spend trillions every year. The second thing is that where is it going to come from, and is he going to keep his promise that he made on the town hall not to touch entitlements, all right? So he says he's going to go after woke, whatever, but the entitlements are what matter. All right. So I want to talk to two people who are stakeholders in this, and you have given them your power to make deals. And is there a deal on the table that will look anything like what the president just offered? We got a member from each party. Republican Representative Mike Herodopoulos from Florida. Herodopoulos, great Irish name. And Democratic Representative Zoe Lofgren of California. It's good to have you both. Thank you for joining me on a Friday night.
Thank you.
Hi, Mike.
So, Mike, I don't know if you heard the president on the town hall the other night. I asked him about this, and he said, I am not touching entitlements. Do you believe that your party, specifically the conservative caucus of it, will allow that?
I believe we're not going to touch Social Security nor Medicare. I think those are both promises made to taxpayers since the first day they went to work. We're not going to touch either one of those programs. We are going to look at Medicaid because, as most people know, there's been a lot of money spent on Medicaid programs for illegal aliens, people who truly are not qualified for Medicaid, and people who are able-bodied. It's a challenging role to take on with a budget deficit of over $1 trillion, but we have to look at the spending problem in Washington. They've run up an overall debt of about $37 trillion, and we're going to make those promises where we're going to try to rein in some of the wild spending as outlined by DOJ. But these are not easy decisions, and that's why Zoe and I need to literally roll up our sleeves and see what we can do to reduce the costs and still provide generous benefits for those people who have earned Social Security and Medicare.
So, Representative Lofgren, do you accept that a major problem with Medicaid is illegal entrants getting benefits? Because that's not my understanding. And what is your concern otherwise?
Well, they're not eligible. Some states, using their own money, provide some coverage, especially for children. But no, that's not going to save any money because you're not eligible now. I do think Medicare, Social Security, and the Medicaid program work together in a way. It's worth noting that roughly 2/3 of the nursing home beds in America are paid for with the Medicaid program. And almost all of those nursing home residents are also on Social Security, also on Medicare. If we do substantial reductions, I know Mike is talking about something else, but the budget directions to the Energy and Commerce Committee were huge reductions in the Medicaid program. The estimate is, rural hospitals all over the country would close. So we'll see. They weren't able to actually do the markup last week. I think there's a number of Republican members, including some from California, that are having cold feet on the magnitude of that proposal. So we'll see. But I've been looking at some other things. I'm the ranking member of the Science Committee, and Mike serves on that committee as chair of the Space Subcommittee. The reductions in the science side are really, the proposals I think are very, very unfortunate and will do long-term damage to the prosperity of this country.
Mike, what do you think about that last point? And also, why isn't the easy answer here? You want to look at Medicaid, fine, but use a scalpel. Turn your eyes to the Department of Defense. And instead of adding money to their budget when all these other things are being compromised with cuts, why not take a cleaver to the Department of Defense before you touch anything else? So Are you worried about science funding? And then why not go after the DOD?
Well, let me try to add this as best I can. Yes, I am worried about the science funding, and I think Zoe and I will work on those together because it's essential that we keep space dominance with the challenges from the Chinese at this point. But I'm going to agree with Zoe. I agree with her. We should not be touching nursing homes. We should not be touching the disabled. We should not be interfering with pregnant women who are on Medicaid. Those are essential. That is our safety net across the country. And I don't want to touch those either. I think we're in agreement there. Beyond that, as far as the military is concerned, I think they should put the DOJ in the Department of Defense. You saw recently that they actually failed the audit once again. But the other reality you have to look at, of course, Chris, is that we lost a lot of equipment in Afghanistan. We spent a lot of equipment, in essence, in Ukraine, and, of course, the challenges in Israel. So we can't just turn our back on the defense spending. That's why groups like DOJ need to go into defense. I'm an equal opportunity employer when it comes to the DOJ. You shouldn't just look at social programs. We have to look at the entire budget.
I mean, so it's not a coincidence that the only thing he's adding to is the military in this budget proposal. I mean, there is something about the grip of everyone who benefits in the DOD. Who is it? Rand Paul calls them the war pimps, or is it Ned Burchett? I think maybe it's Ned Burchett calls them the war pimps. What is it about the DOD that it gets added to when everything else is being looked at for a cut?
Well, I can't explain what the president's choices were. But as far as sending DOJ into anywhere, I think they've done a catastrophic job where they've been. I mean, they had to lay off the nuclear scientists for the stockpile and then rehire them. They've gone into the science fields and just really, cut medical research that's been ongoing for years. We're losing millions of dollars for the research that just got terminated as if we didn't care, all of us. I know Mike cares about funding for cancer and Alzheimer's. We all do. But what they did was just scattershot. And when Musk showed up at some conference with a chainsaw, I think that kind of described his approach. It was not a thoughtful, a serious, targeted analysis. As a matter of fact, they fired all the AGs who do that work and find misconduct or fraud or misuse. So I think we've got a mess on our hands, really.
Hey, Mike, what do you think is going to be the kind of tone and tenor as you get into these negotiations of the parties or your side of the aisle's feelings about the tariffs and whether or not you guys want to get involved with the president's tariffing authority, because most of it comes from you guys?
Well, I think at this point we're giving the president the benefit of the doubt. As everyone knows that China does not play the rules. They have abused their power of being a part of the World Trade Organization without doubt. They still have slave labor. They steal our research and development. There's a bunch of things we can talk about there. We need to also recognize during COVID that we really undercut our own supply chain. So I think we need to take on China in that way. I want to enhance our relationship with Europe and other Asian nations because we want to have those friends overseas for a variety of reasons. I'm optimistic that we can work out deals. It seems like we're making a lot of progress with another emerging power, that being India. But if we're really going to onshore once again and improve our supply chain, we're going to have to make some harder deals with our friends. This is not 1945 anymore. We're a very generous nation and really want to build up those other countries around the world after World War II. But as a historian myself, we also have to look at our friends and say, all we're asking for is a level playing field. There's not fair free trade right now. They're taxing us at a much higher rate than we tax them. I think we can all agree there should be a level playing field and a tax rate with friends should be equal. In fact, I'd love to see no tax rate at all. Let's have true free trade. That is a winner for the United States, and it's a winner, most importantly, for American workers, in my opinion.
I agree.
Go ahead. I'll take that on.
Engaged in misconduct in terms of theft of intellectual property. Certainly the way they've treated the Uyghurs is outrageous, not to mention Tibet. And there are some things that should have been done and can yet be done. But I think these across-the-board tariffs are not the way to go. And then picking a fight with everybody, I mean, Canada, really?
That's very Trump, though.
It is Trump.
That's very Trump. He told me that he would have to scare the Pope when we were talking about terrorism. I said, well, the Pope says this about terrorism. And President Trump says, hey, well, they could come for him next. I said, that's pretty scary. You'd want to scare the Pope? He goes, yeah, I'd scare the Pope. So the president is uniquely qualified.
Quite the way he intended, really. But he can be. I just think we've done damage to our relationships with our allies by jumping in, doing these extraordinarily high tariffs, then taking them back and then putting them back in again. It looks chaotic, and people are thinking we're not trustworthy, we're not reliable, and that is showing in our.
The flip on that is, and of course, I know we all say it, and it's all so trite that time will tell, but something had to be done. Can you easily criticize what was done? Yes, but something had to be done. Let's see where it leads. That's his best hope right now, is that it leads somewhere better, and that is a function of time. We can't settle that now. But Representative Lofgren, I can thank you right now for coming on a Friday night. And Mr. Mike Haradopoulos, I do not usually let men who are smarter and better looking than I am come on the show, but I slipped up tonight. They sent me a fake picture of you. Thank you very much for making the case. But most of all, thank you for showing my audience that right and left can be reasonable together, and that we're not natural enemies. Thank you for letting me make that point.
Well, thank you, Ed. Zoe's a good friend, and I look forward to working with her as we tackle these very challenging issues.
All right, Zoe, thank you very much as well.
Okay.
Hope for the best, plan for the worst. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Coming up on Monday, Sean Diddy Combs is going to have his day in court, or the beginning of his metaphorical day in court. We've learned some of the witnesses, okay? One of them is his ex-girlfriend, Cassie. Now, you may say, well, she has that video. What does she need to testify for? Because she may testify to him committing a different crime with her. And maybe she has a witness to that. One of his longtime lawyers joins me next. In federal prison for 8 months. And it is a lousy prison. And I got to tell you, there is a world where people look at the indictment against him and look at the case as we know it at this point and say, wow, has this guy been overpunished to this point? But now it will begin in earnest on Monday, okay? And we're going to see whether or not the government has the ability to show charges that will have made it a huge mistake for Combs to not take a deal. Now, what's he charged with? Sex trafficking, racketeering, conspiracy, transportation to engage in prostitution. Now, I got to tell you, most of those are implication crimes, meaning that they're going to say, well, we can't get you specifically for this thing, but we know you were part of this enterprise that was doing this thing. If convicted, he could face life. He probably could have gotten a deal. He didn't want a deal. Was that right? Well, that'll be a function of who they bring in to testify. And now we have an idea. The star witnesses could very well be ex-girlfriend Kathy Ventura, right? Yeah, we all saw this horrible video, but supposedly she has more to say, other criminality. We're also hearing that a male sex worker who allegedly took part in those infamous freak-offs could testify, as well as other accusers who've already filed civil suits against Combs. So let's discuss. Let's bring in trial attorney Misty Maris to help me understand why I have it wrong about this situation from a prosecution perspective, and one of Diddy's longtime lawyers. And by the way, my lawyer. I love it. We always talk about him being like everybody else, like I don't count. You know what I mean? Like I never get mentioned. You know, Garagos is my lawyer too. Anyway, Mark, thank you for being here. So, Misty, the idea of we'll get to the witnesses, but first, just the idea that I have not been blown away by this indictment, and I don't know why he would have ever taken a deal. You're saying I'm wrong, and I don't understand how he's exposed already. Tell me.
Absolutely, Chris. I'm shocked he didn't take this deal. Even a brilliant defense lawyer like my friend Mark Garagos over there, say he can get Diddy out of the charges that he's faced with, the sex trafficking, the RICO, the transportation of prostitution. Say all that goes away. The feds still have 3 AR-15 guns with scratched off serial numbers that were found in his possession. That's a minimum sentence of 15 years. So even if a rabbit comes out of a hat and all these other charges, there's an acquittal, that is still there. And I think he's toast on that.
What about that, Mark?
Can I say two things first? Number one.
Yes.
Kudos for last night. Your town hall was actually 2 nights ago was outstanding. Reminded me
Thanks.
of the CNN NAFTA one from the early 90s. That's number one. Number two, Misty, and I'm going to represent you here. I take a little offense about you rarely have somebody smarter or better looking than you on this show. And I guess that's why
Smarter
I'm a regular. But
smarter and. I said I rarely allow men who are smarter and better looking than I am to come on the show. That's what I said.
Yeah, which explains why I'm counted as a regular. So I'll let that just sit there. But let's talk about Diddy for a second. The ball game here is really the RICO action, the so-called enterprise. And the biggest problem the defense has got, but I think they're going to be able to convincingly show a jury, is that this video, which apparently everybody in the world has seen, of Cassie in the hallway, when you break it down, and when you see what the evidence is, they're going to that video is not what he's being charged with. What the prosecution is doing here is reinventing history. They're rewriting history. They're saying, no, that was not a domestic violence situation where the statute of limitations expired. And yes, it's horrible. And yes, it was a misdemeanor. And yes, it was in LA County. But we're going to now say 8 years later that was really had something to do with sex trafficking. And I frankly think that's going to be a bridge too far. I don't think they're going to have the evidence to show that. And I would imagine that Cassie is not going to say that. I think you're also going to see witness after witness say, I never went to the police. I didn't do anything in this case, at least in Cassie's case, until I got on the eve of the Adult Survivors Act. And then my lawyer crafted this whole theory. And that's when I got paid. And by the way, that's when the Southern District decided they're going to criminally prosecute based on a civil lawyer's complaint. I think that is what this case is going to come down to.
So cogent, but I must say, I am very impressed that you did a very interesting dodge. You complimented me. You complimented NewsNation. You told me I'm good looking. So now I'm like only 5% paying attention to anything else. And then you go eloquently through everything but what she said he's going to get nailed with for sure, which is the weapons that were in his possession with the scratched off serial numbers, which you neglected in your beautiful exposition.
Yeah, because I think that you're going to find that is not a charged offense, that it's going to stick to him, and I'll just leave it at that. My belief is that that's actually, from my standpoint, the least of his worries at this point.
How can he get away from that, Misty?
I don't think he can, because it's so crystal clear. And to the extent that they were in his possession, which is my understanding thus far, that is something the feds are just going to have lingering over his head. Even if everything works out your way, you're just, there's no way to wiggle out of that. It's as simple as they're in your possession. They have the scratched off serial numbers, 15-year minimum sentence.
Yeah, there's constructive versus actual possession, and there's all of the law that has transpired in the last 20 years that basically when the guns are in your house, you're not going to get that far. So if I'm ranking my biggest worries or prognosticating my biggest worries, that's not it.
All right, well, we'll see. Let me ask you something else. Monday, jury selection. Mark, you first. Who is the right type of juror for the defense? And then, Misty, you give me the flip on the prosecution.
One of the misnomers about these trials is that somehow the judge has to find people that have not heard about the case. That's not the law. That's not the standard. And frankly, in New York, the idea of finding people who have not heard about Diddy or this case, if they're telling you that, 90% of the people that I run into have heard about it, and the other 10% are lying. Jerry Spence I used to discuss with him many years ago, the idea of somebody who says, I presume that he's guilty, but I can set it aside. That's somebody I might want to go for first.
Misty, who are they looking for, the prosecution side?
Listen, if I'm the prosecution, I want prudes. Keep in mind, the freak-offs are going to be a central part of this case. So I want people, I've been in a monogamous relationship since high school. I've never been to a strip club. I don't like anything that has to do with that, because I want them from the prosecution side to come in, look at those freak-offs, already have the it factor or the ick factor, so that they can take it to the next level and show how it actually violates the law. So that's what I'm looking for on this jury.
Well, if New York City's known for one thing, it's a high index of puritanical people. All right, thank you both very much. I know, right? That should be Gomorrah. All right, Mark, thank you very much. Have a good weekend. Misty, always a pleasure. I'll see you around town.
Thank you.
Break is 4 minutes and 15 seconds. So the president just wrapped up the first 100 days, right? O'Reilly said that town hall wasn't enough for me, brother. I want to go into whether or not you're better off after 100 days than you were before. He's doing a whole hour special on it, and it's so good, he says, I got to have some of your time on your show, too, to tell you how good I am. Next. What you're doing and why you're doing it, that there doesn't seem to be a plan.
The problem is I have to be flexible, because as you do things in life and in business, you need flexibility. You can't just be hard line and I'm going to run right through a wall and I'm never going to go over it or around it. I'm going to go straight. You have to be able to dodge and move and be flexible.
So the question is, will the voters and their appetite for this presidency be as flexible 100 days in? So, NewsNation has a new special airing right after our show, asking that very question and being pursued by the man, the myth, Bill O'Reilly, 100 Days of Trump. Are you better off? Sneak peek.
The only thing that Trump has won on with Congress is passage of the Laken-Riley Act.
Right.
And it passed with Democrats in the Senate. Does that mean that there are things that Trump can get bipartisan support for?
So the Democratic Party will probably place its collective finger up to the wind and see which way the wind is blowing, because it's destroyed now. They've got to get some credibility back. And if they're going to object to everything that Trump does, they're going to get wiped out in the midterms. It's all about the midterms right now for both parties.
Bill O'Reilly joins me on the phone right now. How you doing there, big man?
You know, I'm a little confused tonight, Cuomo, with your statement you don't book males that are smarter and better looking than you.
That's
you're
right.
not going to have a lot of guys on the show. I mean, you know, that pool, that's a shallow pool that doesn't fit into one of the other categories.
I said and. You have to fit into both, Bill.
I got the and, you know.
So 100 days, you know, I had the guy on who wrote the line for Reagan or Bush or whoever it was, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And he was explaining that, how it came about and it was accidental. Is it fair to ask that question 100 days in?
No, it's not. But I think that it's worthy to bring everybody up to date on the first 100 days on the pros and cons. But I think the question would be valid in November. Because a lot of the strategies the Trump administration has put into play are going to take weeks, months to indicate failure or success. What I'm doing with Vitter at 9 o'clock tonight is basically trying to explain why Trump is doing what he's doing and how it will or will not, because there are some things that he's doing that are not going to benefit the American public, in my opinion. This is no cupcake hour. This is a a historical analysis of what he is doing. So that's what we're attempting at 9 o'clock.
What do you think the biggest risk is? What do you think the biggest potential reward is in the next till November?
Well, the biggest risk is always the economy for every president. I mean, you just have to provide security if you are the chief executive for the American people. You have to. And if the tariff stuff and the stock market has come back now a bit, I just got my monthly statement, and I didn't lose much money in the month of April. I did in the first 2 weeks, but it's snapping back. But that trend has to continue upward, and prices have to come down. And the tariff thing is still very intense, and no one can predict it with any honesty at all. No one, how it will go. But that is going to make or break Donald Trump, and he knows it.
Oh, so make or break. So there is potential upside if he gets the deals. All right. I appreciate it, Bill. Thank you for checking in with me.
All right. And, don't get depressed about the guys that are better looking and smarter than you, Cuomo. I mean, don't take that to heart because God gave you what you have. I mean, you just can't do anything about it.
Well, it's a fair assessment, Bill. I can't argue with that. You're right. Thank you, oh wise one. Bill O'Reilly's 100 Days of Trump, Are You Better Off? Airs right after we sign off. Thanks to him, I guess. We'll be right back. That you're constantly being measured, especially in a binary system, right? So there is this frustration that why can't people be patient? Why can't they just put their faith in the people they elected and see where it goes? Because that's not how our politics works. We don't operate from a position of crisis. We operate from a position of preference. And that's why even just 100 days in, you absolutely can be asking whether or not you're better off because we measure moment by moment. Bill O'Reilly with that.